2001. Where were you when that first plane hit that first tower of the World Trade Center? You know, that question comes up. So that question comes up out of nowhere. You can be standing in the grocery line, you could be on an airplane, you could be with family, friends, you could be at a bar. It comes up out of nowhere, but every time that question gets asked, I feel shame. I feel embarrassed. Because on September 11th, 2001, I was in jail. You can do it. They're telling me that it's not their fault, it's their fault. And I feel shame and embarrassed because I was in jail. And I was in jail because I have a mental illness. My mental illness is bipolar disorder. And so the story that I want to tell you today is about an injustice that happened to me. I'm gonna get it together. I'm gonna stop crying at some point. But it's an injustice that happened to me, and it was my greatest weakness for a long time. It has been absolutely translated into my greatest strength, and there is a lesson for all of us in the Y movement from that. So a couple weeks before September 11th, I knew that I was teetering on a manic episode. I had been diagnosed 6 years before. I had been hospitalized twice. And I knew that I was getting to that point where I couldn't come back, that I wasn't able to maintain my sanity. And because I had been through that before, I went to an emergency room and I said, I need help. I have this diagnosis of bipolar disorder. I have been through this before. I don't trust myself to keep me safe. I don't trust myself to be safe in the world. Please help me. That's my dog right there. And so I sat down with the psychiatrist and they asked me a bunch of questions, but because I was lucid enough to answer those questions, they said, we can't hold you here. I cannot claim that you are a danger to yourself or to others, and because of that, I can't hold you here in this hospital. And if I can't hold you in this hospital, your insurance will not cover this stay. At the time, I was working in a homeless shelter. I was earning $16,000 a year. There was no way that I could have afforded that hospital stay. So I walked out of those doors and tried to maintain my sanity on my own. On September 9th, I found myself behind the wheel of the van that belonged to the homeless shelter where I worked. And at some point, I realized I should not be behind this wheel. I shouldn't be driving. I need to get home. I need to get someplace where I can be safe. So I'd stop at red lights, look both ways, drive. Stop at red light, look both ways, drive. Pretty soon I saw the red and blue lights behind me. I pull over. The officer evaluates the situation, sees me. I can't find the registration because it's not my car. I don't know where my license is. And, you know, clearly I shouldn't, the person assessed me correctly. I shouldn't have been behind the wheel. So, but not knowing what to do with me because I'd only run some traffic or some red lights. So they put me in handcuffs and they put me in the back of the cop car. If you've ever had the misfortune, and honestly, looking around the room at so many black and brown faces, I know that someone here is in the back of the cop car. so they put me in the back of that cop car, and if you've ever been in the back of that cop car, it's pretty airtight. And so at some point, the officers there, they call for backup, and then there are 3 white officers standing there. So I motioned to them, like, could you crack the window a little bit? I can't really breathe. And they do that. They oblige. Very nice. And then I asked them, where are the minorities on your police force? They thought it was funny too. One of them said, he went home. This woman who looked very Caucasian to me with very blonde hair, she points at her name tag and says, my last name is Kim, I'm Korean. Now, I don't know what her family history is, I have no idea, but all I know was that I was being mocked, and that made me angry. So I'm still handcuffed, I slide down in the seat a little bit, the window is still cracked open, and I push my foot against that window, and the window pops out. And then they say, that's property destruction, we can take you to the station for that, we can do something. So they drive me to the police station. We end up in booking. By that time, I am so mad. I start yelling. I don't need to be here. I need to go to the hospital. Someone needs to take me to the hospital. And if you're yelling in some sort of a police situation, then I can tolerate that. Somebody walked up beside me. I'm still in handcuffs. She grabs a big chunk of my hair and pulls back. She never identified herself. I had no idea who she was. I used the only thing that I had that I could move, which was my leg, and I kicked her. I kicked her to the side. Now, after this past year, the past 2 years, I know that I am so lucky to be in this skin, because otherwise I would have been tased, I would have been shot, I probably wouldn't be here today. I know that. So my luck, so I get picked up by my limbs, thrown into a jail cell. My head was slammed into the concrete a couple times, and that's how I ended up in jail on September 11th. I ended up with a conviction, or no, sorry, not a conviction, a charge of custodial assault. That's a felony. I would spend the next year walking to the courthouse once a month to pay my restitution, a very tangible reminder of that injustice. The injustice of a failure of a health care system, the injustice of a law enforcement system that cannot de-escalate people in crisis, that does not know what to do with people in crisis. And so out of that situation, I realized that has been the greatest gift of my life, because it has given me an immense sense of humility and has directly connected me to the humanity of the people who might be the most discarded in our communities. When I walk down the street and I see someone who may not have seen a shower in months, who is yelling at someone who's not there, who we're all trying to avoid, I see myself in that person. And when we can connect with somebody who is so different than us, and to those people who we think, that couldn't possibly be me. No, I'm different than that. That couldn't possibly be me. That's their choices. I absolutely know that that could be me. And because of that, I have a great love for people who might find themselves in that situation. And when I understand that that person could be me, then I understand that anyone facing any injustice could be me. And when we're able to see the commonality of humanity among us, despite whatever might be on the outside, whatever past we might have come from, that we are just lucky to be where we are. It is just pure luck that we're where we are. And knowing that, we have an absolute responsibility to help those who may not have been in that lucky position. So, I want to go back a little further. 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. It was a lot of bloodshed, a lot of organizing, a lot more bloodshed. But that seemed like a huge landmark, it was a huge landmark legislation in the fight for civil rights. It seemed like, at that point, we now have a voice. Everyone is able to really vote. and we can move forward. We can elect people in positions of power. We can create laws and policies that are going to support all people. In 2014, Alabama passed a law requiring that you have to have a photo ID in order to vote. A couple weeks ago, Alabama closed 31 of their government offices that issue photo IDs. And those government offices, they happen to be in the rural, most impoverished areas of Alabama, what's sometimes called the Black Belt of Alabama. And what that tells me is that we can change the policies, but unless we change the hearts of the people who are creating the policies, the people who live in our communities, we haven't really made progress. And bit by bit, any of the policies that have been created are going to be chipped away until there's nothing left. And that's what I think is so critical about the Why movement. And I think it is so critical for all of us in this room to claim our space and our responsibility as the Why movement. Because in our 2,700 locations around the country, people, if we're doing our work right, people are coming from every walk of life, from every background, and they're coming into our spaces. And that is an enormous privilege. I can't think of another place where that happens. People are coming to be known. People are coming to know other people. And if we don't take advantage of that and provide space for other people to share their story, for other stories to be heard, space for us to understand the common humanity in each other, then we are letting that incredible opportunity slip through our fingers. And in those 2,700 places around the country, if we provide that space for people, if we invite people in to share their stories, to know each other, to love each other, then the hearts begin to open, and we can plant seeds of love. And that could grow into the beloved community that Dr. King dreamed of. Until now, it has been just a dream. But I believe that in our movement, and with all of us, there are like 450 of us here or something, we have that ability. But it's up to each of us to claim that responsibility and to practice love in every space. And when it's the hardest for us to practice love, when we're encountering the people who it's hardest to listen to, that's when we know that that's where we have to practice it the most. And we have to practice it every day. And I know that it's hard to do. I fail all the time, but that doesn't mean that we don't continue to practice. James ended with a quote, so I'm going to end with a quote. And the quote was from a philosopher. His name is Maimonides, and he lived about 1,000 years ago. He was a Jewish philosopher. And he said that hope is the plausibility of the possible. The beloved community has always been possible. What makes it plausible is that we are banded together as a movement, and that we care deeply about our communities, and that we are a space for all. And that makes that possible, or that possibility, plausible. It makes it likely. And that gives me hope. But only if all of us assume that responsibility. That's all I got.